Whispers on the water. The town of Ravensmere had always been quiet, tucked away among rolling hills and ancient woods. But it was the lake, Lake Lorne, that held its most unsettling secret. For generations, it had been a place of strange stories, of eerie events whispered in the dark, of people lost to its depths, never to be found again. No one could quite explain it, but there was something about the lake that drew people in, a haunting magnetism that both captivated and terrified. It started when Lucy, a young woman from the town, went missing. She had been swimming alone in the lake late one summer evening, the sun sinking low, casting long shadows across the still water. Her body was never found, only a single footprint left behind on the water's surface, a clear imprint of a bare foot, frozen in time, as though someone had walked across the lake itself. The first few days, the town was in shock, but the unease lingered, growing like a shadow that never quite left. Then, a week later, a child named Noah went missing. His friends swore they saw something in the water, a dark figure walking just beneath the surface, its feet barely disturbing the water, leaving footprints that moved against the current. They had heard him scream just moments before he disappeared, but by the time anyone reached the shore, Noah was gone, his fate sealed in the very lake that had claimed Lucy. As more people began to drown, the story started to change. People claimed to see the footprints again. These weren't the markings of someone walking through the water. No, these footprints seemed to be walking away from them, moving swiftly, desperately, as though someone were running in fear. And when they tried to swim out to follow them, the water would grow colder, heavier. The current would pull them under, dragging them deeper into the darkness. But what unsettled the town most wasn't the disappearances, nor the chilling footprints. It was what they saw every night, out on the lake. A figure stood in the middle of the water. At first, it was a faint silhouette, barely discernible against the silver glow of the moon. But then it grew clearer. A man, or perhaps something that resembled a man, standing motionless at the lake's center. He was always there, staring at anyone who dared to look. His form was ethereal, his eyes dark, like hollow pools that swallowed the light. No one ever saw him move, but they swore that he watched them, unblinking, his gaze full of sorrow and longing. There was something about the figure that gnawed at the soul, a kind of unspoken grief that stirred deep within the heart. People began to avoid the lake entirely, but some couldn't resist. They needed to know. They had to understand what was happening, even if it meant confronting the thing that had claimed so many lives. One such person was Mara, a young journalist from the city, determined to uncover the truth. She arrived in Ravensmere after hearing whispers about the lake's strange occurrences. Skeptical at first, she soon found herself drawn to the water, as though some invisible force was calling her. She spoke with the locals, but no one could offer her any concrete answers. All they knew was that there was something ancient and malevolent in those waters, something they had learned to fear. Mara stayed in a small guest house overlooking the lake. One evening, as the sky turned from amber to violet, she went down to the shore to photograph the water's surface. It was calm, too calm, and for a moment, she thought she saw something beneath the ripples. Her heart quickened, her breath shallow. She took a step closer. That's when she saw it, a single footprint, perfectly etched into the water. She gasped, her mind racing. It was moving, shifting, as though someone was walking just below the surface. She reached out, her fingers brushing the water, and the moment she touched it, the lake seemed to shudder. The footprint surged away from her, fast, too fast. The water grew dark, and the air turned heavy, thick with dread. Mara stumbled back, her heart pounding as she turned to run. But there, standing in the middle of the lake, was the figure. He was closer now, much closer, his hollow eyes fixed on her with an intensity that made her blood run cold. Her legs refused to move, rooted to the ground as she stared back at him. Then, without warning, the figure raised his arm, pointing directly at her. His mouth opened, but no sound came, just a hollow wind, a whisper carried by the water. "Leave this place," the wind seemed to say, "before it takes you to." Suddenly, the water surged, and the figure dissolved into the mist, his presence fading like a bad dream. The lake was still again, but Mara knew that something had changed. She could feel it in her bones. Something dark had awakened. She had been warned, but it wasn't enough. She wasn't just an outsider here. She was part of the story now. The next morning, Mara left Ravensmere. She couldn't stay another night, couldn't bear the thought of the lake or the figure who haunted it. But the truth she had uncovered was impossible to shake. The lake wasn't just dangerous. It was alive, a force older than the town itself, and it wasn't finished yet. As Mara drove away, she glanced back one last time. In the distance, she could swear she saw the figure standing in the water again, his eyes locked with hers, as if knowing that it would only be a matter of time before the next person would cross the line and become part of the lake's curse. The mystery of Lake Lorne wasn't over. It had only just begun.